here, it is very interesting to mention in no ancient times for her to live 5 lives there as a human, not rather a humanoid, but a lizard humanoid. 5 lives in the Draco system in the ancient times as a lizard humanoid. Now, this would have had to, she would have had to been on a small planet in a hardly populated system of planets for in those times. And Tralaka remembers this himself. For in those times, there was no love between the ancient lizard humanoids and the ancient Draco dragons or Draco humanoids or any other version of Draco. Oh, wow. Draco old school ancient time dragons and dragon humanoids, all of them felt that lizard beings of nearly any variation should be treated as a disease. Whoa, wow. Now, here we go into the explanation of her 5 lives in the Draco system of planets and moons, as is understood just how much was going against her, even from the very age of birth in those 5 lives. Her average height would be 5 foot. No, she was taller than 5 foot. Let me adjust the file. 7 foot. Her average height would be 7 foot 7 inches. Once again, it pays if you have all the kinks out of the paper file. The looks of her lizard humanoid were rather complex, having ocean blue skies. A lizard with ocean blue eyes? Wow. Now, and they were larger than normal. Her humanoid body having this mid-tanning color, the scales tight to the body. From a distance, you wouldn't notice the lizard aspects about her very much. But she did have a 7.5-inch protruding jawline on her face, having 2 oversized canine teeth on the front sides of her mouth, like canine dogs have and a lot of humans on Earth have. But within, she had a double row of shorter teeth. This next part is hard to explain, so here I go. However, the inner teeth on the front row of her jaw were tilted. They were tilted in a manner, and they grew in a manner to act like hooks, which would enable a bit and shredding of the material. It would enable her to be able to bite it, and with that there, twist, turn, and shred by these manners. Anything she would bite into. Now, this in a person-to-person fight against her and others would be a rather meaningless one in the fact that it would be over before it started once she got going, unless, of course, the one she went against had a very fast trigger hands and fingers and would shoot beings like her before they shredded them apart. Now, this was just one of those grinding points. Many ancient Draco dragons hated any versions of the lizard beings in any form so much because of their ability to rip and shred while they're fighting that they had a long tendency to do, along also with the lack of trust. Now, this was not so much in talking about it to non-Draco humanoids or other forms that Dracos would do business with. Now, they kept this very tight in the communications. They didn't talk about this with the general public because it was personal, and the Dracos didn't like to let rumors get out because the problem was that inner row of those that had those like hooked teeth for those lizard humanoids. They would be able to grip, rip, and chew through a younger scaled Draco humanoid or Draco dragons through the scales and quickly into the abundant Draco dragon's muscular flesh. So their greatest fear was a lizard humanoid finding one of their young ones, and because the younger ones would have softer scales with the tooth and the way they'd be able to strip that away, strip, grip, and rip, and kill the children. Now these lives for her were very interesting. Then, as we can say here, this here was just the beginning of explaining of her lives. For this here, what would come next would bring a whole new level of experience she had, not even close to her other experience before her many layers of ancient past life. Having ocean blue eyes, which were larger than normal. Ocean blue eyes, a lizard humanoid with ocean blue eyes? How strange. Her humanoid body having this mid-tan in color. The scales tight to the body from a distance were usually hard to see. Now, she did have a 7.5-inch protruding jawline on her face. However, at her height, you would only see this from a side contrast. But she had 2 oversized canine teeth on the front, on each side of the fronts of her mouth. And within, she had a double row of shorter teeth. However, the inner teeth in the front line of her jaw had these little hooks on them, which would enable them to bite down and shred any of the materials or beings that she bit into. Now, this in a person-to-person fight against her and others like her would be just, this here would be just a meaningless fight. It'd be over before it started, unless the one she was going to bite down on had a much faster trigger hands and fingers and would shoot beings like her before they were able to be killed by being shredded to pieces. It was incredible things here. Now, this was one of those grinding points that many ancient Draco dragons hated the lizard beings in any form so much because of their reputation of grip, rip, and shred fighting that they had the tendency to use in their also long heritage. Now, this was not so much talked about to non-Draco humanoids of other forms the Dracos would do business with, because because this was held tight to them. They didn't want rumors like this getting out that would chew away at the boldness of the Draco dragons and the Draco humanoids. Now, for that inner row of those hooked-like teeth for those lizard humanoids of that variation to grip, rip, and chew through the younger scale, the younger Draco dragons with their younger scales, they were very easily by the lizard humanoids to strip, rip, and grip, and then bite down into the very abundant Draco dragon's muscular flesh. Now, those lives for her would come to bring a whole new level of experience she had never even come close to before in all of her ancient layers of ancient past lives. With all of those things against her, she would still enter into the profession of being a fighter pilot, a very dangerous, avenging class of a fighter pilot she was, which brought both shock and pure levels of awe, depending on which line of the battle you're looking at this. Her lizard, bangy, elastic, tight musculars and her quick fingers maneuvered her fighter in mind-numbing speeds. Now, this was a never-ending argument with the fighter crew mechanics because of the strain to those fighter crafts that she flew and others like her flew. Well, there were some of her in her battalion that were more respectful for their crafts, but this was not too much of a given. No, because for her, this craft would be the avenging anvil of delivering death, which she felt was pain was deserved. This pain was deserved that she was sending to her enemies. She felt this was very plainly understood by the enemies of the manner she was delivering the shock, awe, and death. Time in and time out. Time gone of those 5 lives. It would be, though, the last 2 of those lives in which she... interesting here, it's in those last 2 of those lives in which she yet on that avenging anvil of death in her fighter crafts. Now, it was there in those last 2 lives in which she would finally learn patience and learn the fighter mechanics for their fighter spacecrafts she used. Perhaps she ran out of mechanics brave enough to work on her ship. Would you want to work on her ship? I wouldn't want to work on her ship, and probably Tralaka wouldn't want to work on a ship. Nevertheless, she should learn enough to modify her crafts, because she found some inner peace where this patience is born from, to enable her to understand the modifications she needed for her crafts, which would enable her to deliver, guess what? Yes, more levels of avenging anvils of death, battles against the enemies, or anyone, of course, who crossed her. She considered them the same. Now, was this a darker side of humor of the living universe, or needs that fits the demand for pressing encounters? It was stories such as this, which was known during those ancient times. Parents would be telling their children, after the evening meal, to scare the children, at times to making sure the bedrooms are kept clean, unless, of course, the avenging lizard female humanoid will come to hide in the mess in their rooms and jump out to feast on them in the nighttime. And it scared the willies out of children for mega times. But both here in time and yet in ancient times, warriors in spaceports finally began to talk about even their frightful full encounters with such levels of fighters as certain variables of the lizard humanoids. That would even scare some of the warriors, the really hard-class warriors dedicated to winning the battles. That would scare even them to their very core. Now, in the next 3 lifetimes, she would be that of an old-school Draco humanoid. Those lives were unusual for her, for she was this fire and smoke breather Draco humanoid. Not excruciatingly common, however, they are out there. Now, she, though, stood at 7 feet 4 inches as she was walking, but only 4 foot 10 inches when she was sitting. Now, her radiating bluish green eyes, a Draco humanoid with radiating bluish green eyes. Something else that's unique here. And she had this twin set of eyelids, inner and outer. Well, she's had this in other lives, okay? Now, but this kept her eyes clear during the time that she would be breathing out fire or smoke. It would keep her eyes clear to be able to see very clearly, or in situations that other workers could not be in without substantial equipment. Now, those lives were quite long. The first one at 15,060 solar years. The second one at 26,001 year. And the third one was at 18,953 in solar years. Very long lives. Imagine if she would be an author, how many books she could spin, spending much of the younger years usually as a fighter pilot or co-pilot, This was a deep passion for her, but the deepest passion was the thrill of the takeoff and the landing of any spacecraft that she worked with. Well, in so many incredibly long space flights, one could see her either at a card table playing with friends, or one would see her studying on the holodecks in many, many layers of interest. Later in her lives, to take the study